Hola guys, Deja Perez back with another edition of What's Poppin' the podcast. And today I am joined by a very special guest. I have Martine with me. Hello.
Hi, Deja. Hi, guys.
Welcome to KYS. Okay, so let's tell everyone first and foremost who you are.
My name is Martine Kalaw. I am a consultant, so I do professional development training for organizations globally. I'm a Huffington Post blogger, so I write op-ed pieces on immigration, and I'm an author of Illegal Among Us. So this is my memoir about my journey of being undocumented for 11 years and spending 7 years in deportation, and how I went from that to a U.S. citizen. So that's my story. And then I also, lastly, I am a commentator on immigration. So given everything that's going on even today, I always add, my feedback, my perspective, because I lived it, I studied it, and I mentor people on the conversation on immigration.
Okay, so let's backpedal a little bit. You said you were undocumented for 10, 11 years?
11 years.
Okay,
yes.
So where are you originally from?
I was born in Zambia. My family's from DR Congo. So I came here when I was 4 years old with my mother. And, we came here to pursue the American dream because she was with her family was in the United States.
Okay, were they citizens?
They were citizens. My mom was a permanent resident.
Okay.
My stepfather, who was American born, was also, obviously, he was a U.S. citizen. So,
okay.
Yep.
So how did this process go? Like, you came here when you were 4. Yeah. You didn't have papers, as we'll say. And
actually, I did when I came. So I came on, and this is one of the things, the myths I always like to dispel. A lot of us dreamers, so dreamers are individuals who came at a young age, on average, that is the age of 6. So there are, over 2.9 dreamers today who are still undocumented and don't qualify for DACA.
2.9 million.
2.9 million dreamers who do not qualify for DACA. So we have 800,000 DACA recipients who are dreamers, but then you have 2.9 million dreamers who don't qualify. So
why don't they qualify?
So many of them came to the U.S. So dreamers are individuals who came to the U.S. with their parents when they were children. The average age was 6 years old. And for whatever reason or other, they fell out of status. Maybe it's because their parents didn't adjust their status, or in my case, extenuating circumstances. My mother and my stepfather died by the time I was 15. So that's how I became undocumented. Wow. I didn't have anyone. And, quite honestly, at 15, when you lose your parents and you become an orphan, what you're thinking about is surviving.
Yeah.
The basic necessities, like where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to eat? How do I keep from getting into the foster care system? Like, how do I take care of myself? So the last thing I would even imagine was that, let me adjust my status, or how do I go about that?
Or if you even realized that you needed to adjust it.
Exactly. Wow. So I did come here legally, and most dreamers do come to the U.S. legally. I mean, that the whole, everything that Trump is talking about, dedicating $5 billion, wasting $5 billion to build a wall to keep people from coming in, and everyone, and talking about how all these individuals are a threat to society and they're criminals. That's the majority of undocumented immigrants are actually individuals that came here legally.
Wow.
And they overstayed their visas. That's how most people become undocumented. They overstay their visa for one reason or another.
Okay. Yes. So once everything happened, you lost your mom and your stepfather, and you're 15, you're by yourself. What happened then?
So I don't want to give away everything that's in the book, but
the Cliff Notes version.
Long story short, one other reason I wrote this book, and I like to share, a little bit of the story and summarize it, because in the whole context of immigration, what we don't do is acknowledge the kindness that does exist in America. There's a lot of kindness.
That's a different spin on it.
There's some really good people in this country. So the journey of me going from being undocumented, being 15 years old, being an orphan, to where I am today had a lot to do with strangers who decided to help me, who decided to invest in me, kind people. So actually my journey starts in Silver Spring, Maryland, right? So I grew up, when I came to the U.S., I actually came to Silver Spring, Maryland. I lived here for most of my childhood. And, I came back after my mother and stepfather died. I was tossed around from one family member's home to another on my mother's side. And, it was in some homes there was a lot of abuse. And so a stranger saw me working in my aunt's consignment shop on Georgia Avenue. And I remember at the time there was a murder that happened directly across the street. This was like, a couple years ago, many years ago. It was back in 1999 or 1996 or something, around 1997. And I was 16 years old by that time. And my aunt decided to take me out of school. She thought that I, would be better, more beneficial to be her as a workhorse. And so I'd given up hope on everything, and then a stranger walked into the store and decided that she needed to get me out of this situation. And she passed me on from, her hands to another group of women who assisted and supported minority students into getting into prep school. And then from there, I was passed on to another individual who ended up acting as my benefactor. And he happened to be a judge. He and his wife did not want me to know that they were my benefactors. So I went to boarding school, not knowing how I was there, believing I just got a scholarship, but I wasn't eligible for, federal funding to get any kind of scholarship. And that's where the story just continues, and I went to college and grad school, but it was during my college years that, I found out, I realized that I was undocumented and I was placed in deportation proceedings. And that's when I say that my immigration nightmare really began.
So how can people get the book? Because I don't want to give too much away about the book, but how can people get the book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I actually have the shirt.
I'm here for the shirt, by the way.
Thank you. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. You can also go to my website. It's martinekalaw.com, MartineKalaw.com. And I'm also, you can follow me on Twitter at Martine_Kalaw.
Okay, so briefly, sorry to cut you off. Briefly, I want you to explain kind of what your experience was like in the deportation nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was
how
horrific.
old were you when you went in?
So I went in when I was I was 18 or 19, and I was in there for 7 years, right? And so I wasn't in a deportation. I wasn't in a detention facility, thankfully. I was in court for 7 years. And, I talk about this in my book, and I talk about the mental health aspect of it that I struggled with, because what people don't, realize is when you're in limbo, imagine all of us, we can all relate to being in limbo when you don't know. You don't know when the other shoe is going to drop, when someone in your family is extremely ill, when you don't know if, the next paycheck is going to come in. But imagine living that experience for 7 years. And for me, the fear was, first of all, the judge was on a crusade to deport me. So he said I was an awful human being and I deserved to be deported. I was stateless, so I had no country that acknowledged me as a citizen.
Because your home country didn't acknowledge it.
My birth country didn't acknowledge me, and my mother's birth country and my mother and biological father's birth country, which was DR Congo, didn't acknowledge me. The U.S. didn't acknowledge me. So I would, in fact, have been one of those people that we read about who ends up in detention facility indefinitely. That's what happens to people like me. When they don't know what to do with you, they just stick you in a detention facility. And you know what? They take away all your basic human rights, right? So there are many people who actually die in detention facilities. And this is actually not even just a U.S. phenomenon. It's a worldwide phenomenon. There are over 2,000 detention facilities in the world.
I had no idea.
Yep. And so I really believed, and the reason I wrote this book was because I thought that I was going to end up in a detention facility and I was going to be raped and killed and I was going to die. I really did believe that. So I wrote this. I started writing this story because I wanted people to know that I existed in this world, in America, and I wanted people to know the kind of things that were actually happening in America, to people like me. I think, what people think and the way sometimes media portrays it is that there's a certain face to undocumented immigrants. There's a certain way they speak. There's certain jobs
right.
they qualify. No, it's illegal among us, right? Anyone can actually be undocumented. You don't know. It's not.
There's no scarlet letter.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted people to know that this is what was happening. You know, I was non-threatening. I was just doing the best that I could with the circumstances that were handed and dealt to me. And, you know, I had this judge who was on this crusade, and my attorneys. I had 6 attorneys at the time.
Wow.
I went through 6 different attorneys. And one of the reasons the judge was on this crusade was because my attorney misrepresented my case, right? This happens a lot to a lot of immigrants, right?
Okay.
It's almost like at this point, you've got some great immigration attorneys, but then you have many that exploit individuals.
Because what are they going to do?
Exactly.
Wow,
they exploit
that's
them,
sleazy.
and these individuals are, you know, they're giving their last dollar to these attorneys because they're hoping for some sort of help and relief. They're hoping for somebody to save them.
Right.
And so in my story, I talk about how I ended up saving myself. I studied immigration law because my attorneys weren't, my first attorney, who I had for 4 years, was misrepresenting me. He, you know, committed malpractice, quite honestly, with my case. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna learn. I'm
do
gonna
it myself.
I'm gonna figure out my own case. So I studied immigration law and policy in grad school, and I basically ended up challenging my lawyer, and I became his checks and balance. So I write about some of the things that I did to navigate this space because I want others in my shoes to be able to empower themselves and know that, yes, it does feel like you have no power, but you have some. And there are certain skills that can support you while you're navigating through this process. And I also wrote it for people who have no idea, you know, what immigrants are going through, what undocumented immigrants are going through, what the real life experience is. Because right now, everyone else is telling our stories except us.
Right. People that haven't lived it
That's
are
right.
telling it. Well, you are freaking amazing, first and foremost.
I'm going on and on, so I'm going to stop talking.
No, I mean, like, honestly, I wish I could, like, have you here all day because there's so much that I feel like we get the Instagram version of what's going on. You know what I mean? Like the 15-second, 1 minute, that's it, you know? But what kind of advice would you give to a person in a similar situation? You know, they're here, they're undocumented or whatever the term is, who wants to do it the proper way. Like, what kind of red flags should they look for in attorneys, for instance? Like, what are some of the red flags they need to look for?
Well, because some people will say they're attorneys. They're not attorneys. They're immigration consultants or what have you, right? So they will actually position themselves as, you know,
This is dreadful.
I can represent you, but they can't actually go to court. Yeah, maybe they can fill out the paperwork. So that's one thing, you know, and that happens a lot, Deja, a lot. I mean, it's
scary.
actually really sad. And, you know, and some attorneys, I see it a lot in many communities where attorneys will just bleed a person dry of money and say, you know,
and then give
me the money, and then they just disappear for months and months and months, and they don't make their case a priority. I say to anybody who has, you know, who's seeking an immigration attorney, it's the same thing as going to a doctor or, you know, going to doctors. You get a second opinion, right?
Okay.
You go around, you ask. You have the right to ask.
Okay.
Many of us don't ask. I didn't ask at first because I was so scared.
Yeah.
I felt so disempowered. And, you know, the attorney that I had was extremely insensitive. Now, granted, when you think about how many, there are 11 million undocumented immigrants, you know, in America. You know, I think it's like the number's like 15,000 immigration attorneys. I don't know of those 15,000, how many are, you know, really qualified and, you know, doing great, you know, the work that they should be doing. And so attorneys are inundated. Immigration attorneys are inundated with cases.
Okay.
The courts, there are 58 immigration courts in the U.S.
That's it?
Yep. That's it. There are 350 immigration judges in the U.S.
That's
right
it.
now, there are 733,000 pending immigration cases. Immigration judges get quotas, right? So the whole system is broken. And that's really what I talk about. That's what I study. That's what I really want to help to change and influence. So when the advice I would give individuals is ask questions.
Okay.
You have the right, if you're hiring this attorney or even if they're pro bono, you still have the right to ask them questions.
Okay.
Do some research online. I know that sometimes, from a medical standpoint, they say Google is not your friend. Like, don't research anything when you
WebMD,
diagnose yourself. But in the context of immigration, do some research. Go on Google. Ask your attorney questions. Also, align yourself with immigrant organizations.
And that's going to be my next question, sidebar, because I don't know if a lot of people know, but there are a lot of free resources at the library. Like if you don't have access to a computer or a laptop at home,
that's right.
You can get it free. I think it's only like 20 minutes at a time or something, but you can use the computers at your local library.
But
what are some resources that people in this situation can reach out to?
There are tons of them, but the ones that I know and I've partnered with or collaborated with is United We Dream. It's a huge organization. They just actually had their 10th Congress in Miami, Florida, that I spoke at. I led a workshop. So that's a great organization because they're nationwide. You can become a member. And a lot of these organizations are very sensitive to individuals who may not want to have a paper trail. They don't, so if that is something that's of a concern to you, don't worry because these organizations know how to maneuver through that. So United We Dream is one, and DocuBlack is another one that I'm part of. The African Immigrant Coalition is another one that's based right in Silver Spring. I mean, these are just some of the organization. The National Immigration Lawyers Council, NAILA, NAILA, that's based in DC. That's the acronym. They also provide resources. So you can call them and ask them, hey, can you recommend a lawyer, an attorney for me in California? They can point you in the right direction, right? So those are the organizations that I really, I stand, behind and I've worked with, and I know that, they really do great work. There are tons of them out there, but those are just some that you can get started with.
Okay, fantastic. So tell everyone where they can get the book one more time.
You can get the book on Amazon and on Kindle, but you can go directly to my website if you just need to navigate through that. And my website is martinekalaw.com, martinekalaw.com.
And there you also have additional resources on everything that you talk about, I assume, as well.
I do. Okay. So I actually have a maze where you can actually see my process of how the journey that I took to get to where I got to.
Okay.
I'm also going to start putting down, listing some recommendations of attorneys that I start to partner with and identify so that it's got the Martine
stamp of approval.
I want to do that. I'm going to be uploading some documents. I do training, so I'm actually going to be leading a workshop for 100 attorneys in New York City.
That's great.
In January. So they purchased this book. I'm going to walk them through that because I want them to be more sensitive to individuals like myself.
Absolutely.
And, I offer some statistics on things that are going on, and, anything else you can reach out, go on my website, email me, and then I'm happy to support you any way that I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. And
You're welcome.
I'm putting this on the record officially. If you need any help that I can be of service,
thank you.
You have my number. Just call me, and I am
so much.
100% down. I don't know tons about the situation. That's my own fault.
That's okay. It's very confusing.
I'm definitely here to learn, and I'm definitely here to help. So officially I'm extending from me to you. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. If you have anything going on in the Silver Spring or DMV area, let us know so we can get the station behind it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mama. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another edition of What's Poppin', the podcast on 93.9 WKYS.